Welcome to the Sunday morning service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. We're glad to be together on such a gray, soggy day on Zoom and in person. Whether you ran in on little feet, strode in on strong legs, walked in, or rolled in, you are welcome here. All are welcome here regardless of where you are from, your religious background or lack thereof, or whom we love. We humbly recognize that we are on the grounds and the lands of the Otomi, Chichimeca, and Nawa peoples. I'm Nora Cohen. I will be your service leader today. After the service, those on Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with others in the main room for discussion. And those who are with us at the Aldea can join us for coffee and cookies. We have these visitors. Uh-oh, what did I do with them? Sorry. We have Melissa Failure from Tucson. Would you please stand? There's Melissa. And Jimmy and Robert Johnson. Thank you. From SMA in Houston. Are there any other visitors here today with us? Would you please stand? We would like to recognize you and greet you at coffee. Thank you. For those on Zoom, please, if you are new visitors, please type your name in the chat box so we can greet you later. We do record our Sunday services, the in-person ones. So go to our UUFSMA website, uufsma.org, and click on services at the top, and then previous services. And while on the website, please check out the various events sponsored by our fellowship and information on how to become a member. Today we have our children here, our second UU Explorers class this year. As always, when they're here, we will participate together in the chalice lighting and the Children's Covenant, accompanied by hand gestures and a story for all ages. So may we receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts of grace that they are, and re-enter our lives anew each moment we have together. So, and Lourdes is going to help the children with the chalice lighting.
We're going to start with reading the English version of the Children's Covenant, accompanied by the hand gestures. The words will appear on the screen. Then I will lead us and the children in the Spanish translation, again with the gestures. Siempre que estén aquí, participaremos juntos en iluminación del cáliz y en el convenio de los niños, acompañados por los gestos de las manos. Las palabras aparecerán en la pantalla. Luego nos guiaré a nosotros y a los niños en la traducción al español, de nuevo con los gestos. Okay. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism.
Iluminamos este cáliz para celebrar el unitario universalismo.
This is the place of the open mind.
Este es el lugar de la mente abierta.
This is the place of the helping hands.
Este es el lugar de las manos que ayudan.
Este es el lugar, this is the place of the loving heart.
Este es el lugar del corazón amoroso.
Together we care for each other, for the earth, and we work for friendship and peace in our world.
Juntos nos cuidamos unos a otros, cuidamos la tierra y trabajamos por la amistad y la paz en nuestro mundo.
When you don't feel good about yourself, are you able to be kind to other people?
Cuando ustedes no se sienten bien consigo mismos, ¿son capaces de ser amables con ustedes mismos?
The little girl in the story that I'm about to read you has problems with herself, and she's not very nice to other people.
La niña de la que vamos a hablar en el cuento hoy no es muy amable con ella y tiene dificultades con los demás.
See what helps her find grace.
Veamos cómo encuentra la gracia.
Look at the front cover and then at the back cover. The girl who did the designs, who did the illustrations for this book, is a student at UUFSMA. UUFSMA is the school for deaf children here in San Miguel. And John Doherty, one of our own members, was the founder of this school. And one of the things that really delighted me was that her mother, when we presented this book to the audience at UUFSMA, said, "My daughter is a different person since she has been finding her talents. She feels so much better about herself. She's laughing and smiling. She found grace."
Nora inspiró este libro en la ilustradora Fernanda, que es una alumna de la escuela ESMA. Su madre le comentó que ella, al estar ilustrando, fue encontrando su propia gracia dentro de ella misma.
And the copyright page, all royalties from the sale of this book benefit this you.
Todas las ventas sobre este libro van a beneficiar a los yuyus.
I am a clumsy child. I fall over rocks and trip over curbs because my eyes do not work together.
Soy una niña torpe. Me caigo sobre piedras porque mis ojos no funcionan juntos.
When I was 6, I had an eye operation, but I'm still scared of other kids and keep them away with a frown.
Cuando cumplí 6 años, tuve una operación de vista. Eso ayudó, pero todavía tengo miedo de otros niños y les guardo distancia con el ceño fruncido.
Mama and Papa think ballet lessons might help me. They work extra hard to give me lessons.
Mamá y papá piensan que unas clases de ballet podrían ayudarme. Trabajan extra para darme las lecciones.
I love my teacher, my dance teacher, Vivian. She has black hair pulled up in a bun like ballet dancers on TV. But sometimes I'm not very nice to the other girls in my ballet class. I get in line in front of them. Sometimes I even shove them.
Adoro a mi maestra de ballet, Vivian. Ella tiene el pelo negro recogido en un chongo, como las bailarinas por televisión. A veces no soy muy buena con las otras chicas en mi clase de ballet. Me paro frente a ellas y a veces incluso las empujo.
I follow my teacher's movements, trying to get my arms and legs to copy hers. She gently pulls a few hairs on the top of my head to help me line up my body. I pretend I'm a puppet on a string, tall and strong.
Copio los movimientos de mi maestra, tratando de mover los brazos y las piernas para seguir los suyos. Ella me jala unos cabellos de la cabeza suavemente hacia arriba, para ayudarme a alinear mi cuerpo. Finjo que soy una marioneta en una cuerda. Me siento alta y fuerte.
As the weeks pass, I feel a change coming over me. I can do all 5 positions, turn pirouettes, and leap across the floor.
Con el transcurso de las semanas, siento un cambio en mí. Puedo hacer todas las 5 posiciones de dar piruetas y saltos a través del suelo.
I move my arms and legs in long movements. I begin to feel more graceful. I even let some of the other girls in front of me.
Extiendo mis brazos y las piernas en movimientos largos. Empiezo a ser más elegante. Incluso dejo a algunas de las otras chicas ponerse frente a mí.
One day, Mama stays to watch. At the break, she says, "How graceful you are becoming. I'm so proud of you. Are you becoming more graceful in your heart?"
Un día, mamá se queda para ver. En el descanso, dice, «Qué elegante estás quedando. Estoy tan orgullosa de ti. ¿Tienes más gracia en tu corazón?»
What does that mean, Mama? Finding grace means many things, she answers, but she doesn't tell me what.
¿Qué significa eso, mamá? Encontrar la gracia quiere decir muchas cosas, contestó, pero no me dice más.
I think a minute, and then I say, "You mean like when Aunt Julia kisses me and gets her lipstick all over my cheek, and I try not to get mad?"
Pienso un minuto y digo, ¿quieres decir como cuando la tía Julia me besa y pone su labial en mi mejilla y yo trato de no enojarme?
Mama laughs and says, "Yes, how you treat someone else is a good example."
Mamá ríe y dice, sí, como tratas a alguien más es un buen ejemplo.
But Aunt Julia squeezes me when she kisses me, and she leaves red marks. I think it's easier to be graceful dancing.
Pero la tía Julia me aprieta cuando ella me besa y deja sus marcas de besos rojos. Creo que es más fácil tener gracia bailando.
I pirouette around Mama. She smiles.
Yo giro alrededor de mi mamá. Ella sonríe.
Forgiving your Aunt Julia is finding grace. Remember what you did when you broke your sister's doll? She played with my stuff without asking, I say.
Perdonar a tu tía Julia es encontrar la gracia. ¿Recuerdas lo que hiciste cuando se rompió la muñeca de tu hermana? Jugaba con mis cosas sin pedir permiso, le digo.
And what did you do? I pulled her doll's head off. Sarah was crying so hard I gave her my doll to make her feel better.
¿Y qué hiciste? Le arranqué la cabeza a su muñeca. Sara estaba llorando tanto que le di mi muñeca para que se sintiera mejor.
That was grace, because it was hard to give up your doll, said Mama.
Esa fue la gracia, porque era difícil sacrificar a tu muñeca, dice mamá.
Mostly she wouldn't stop crying, and I was afraid I would get in trouble.
Sobre todo porque ella no dejaba de llorar, y yo tenía miedo de meterme en problemas.
But you did it, and I'm proud of you, says Mama.
Pero lo hiciste, y estoy orgullosa de ti, dice mamá.
Suddenly I felt bad. Mama, I'm sorry I sometimes treat Sarah so mean.
De repente me sentí mal. Mamá, lo siento que a veces trato a Sara tan mal.
Mama hugged me. That is grace, my child, acknowledging your mistakes.
Mamá me abrazó. Eso es gracia, hija mía, reconocer tus errores.
I will try to be nicer to her, even if she is my sister.
Trataré de ser más amable con ella, aunque ella sea mi hermana.
Mama smiled. That is a good idea. You are becoming such a graceful young person.
Mamá sonrió. Eso es una buena idea. Te estás convirtiendo en una joven tan llena de gracia.
Then I had the best idea of my life. Mama, What if Sarah and I took our dolls and other toys that we don't play with and give them to the homeless shelter for kids who don't have them?
Luego, se me ocurrió la mejor idea de mi vida. Mamá, ¿qué pasaría si Sara y yo juntamos nuestras muñecas y otros juguetes que ya no usamos y se los damos al albergue de desamparados para los niños que no los tienen?
That is finding grace, sweet child. You are thinking about others and taking action to make things better in the world. Please gather your toys. Let's take them tomorrow.
Eso es encontrar la gracia, querida. Estás pensando en otros y tomando acciones para mejorar las cosas en el mundo. Junta tus juguetes. Los llevaremos mañana.
Back in ballet class, my teacher Vivian claps her hands so we know to line up again.
Otra vez, en mi clase de ballet, mi maestra Vivian aplaude y sabemos que nos tenemos que formar.
I stand in line behind the rest of the girls. I push my glasses up on my nose so they won't fall off, and I take the 5th position. I feel Mama watching me.
Corro para estar en línea detrás del resto de las chicas. Acomodo mis gafas en la nariz para que no se caigan y tomo la 5ª posición. Siento a mi mamá mirándome.
I twirl across the room. I am finding grace.
Yo giro por la sala. Estoy encontrando la gracia.
Now the children will light their chalice lantern from our chalice candle and bring it back to their classroom so they can begin their activity for today. Y ahora los niños van a encender el cáliz con la linterna que tiene la vela de nuestro cáliz y la traerán a la sala de clase para que podamos empezar nuestras actividades para el día de hoy.
Please remain seated as we sing the children out to class with hymn number 413. We'll sing the Spanish first so all the children understand the lyrics. Let's join our voices together in song. Hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and remain standing for the covenant. Words will appear on your screen.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
And now I invite you to all join together in reciting this fellowship's unique covenant, first in English and then with Paola leading us in Spanish. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jürgen Allers. I'm a member of the Sunday Service Committee. One of the dynamic elements of our being a beloved community are the values, our cherished values, and the principles that guide us to be a beloved community. And as we gather every Sunday, which is kind of a ritual for many of us, we do have rituals. One of them was, this, you saw this morning, always we begin our worship with the lighting of the candle. Another very beloved element or ritual of our community, of our service, is this time when we share what lies deep in our hearts, when we share joys, sorrows, or concerns, whether it is about a fellow member of our fellowship or beyond. And I now invite you to share in these joys and concerns that have been brought to our attention. We light a candle for each joy just to celebrate this concern that has been brought, indicating that this person, this situation, this prayer is shared and held deeply by all of us this morning. By the way, if you have a joy or concern that you'd like to share in the future, we invite you to do so by emailing our minister, Tom Rosiello, anytime during the week. If you are on Zoom, and you might have a joy or sorrow or concern you would like to share today, then we would invite that you bring it to our attention in the chat box. This morning I'm going to begin with the joys and concerns that have been brought to our attention by the 3x5 cards that we solicit whenever you come into this worship service. So I'm going to begin by sharing those cards with you. It's, for me personally, a great joy, but I'm sure you all agree with me that it's delightful to see Linda Soren back within us. There she is in the second row. She writes that she's very grateful for the good wishes and, of course, the flowers that have been graciously presented to her. A long-time member, full-time resident of San Miguel and member of our fellowship, David Burton, is back after a long absence in Turkey and in Ottawa, and we welcome David's presence back in our midst. We light a third candle by welcoming, by announcing that Susan Neubeck is in rehab and apparently is doing quite well. So we're glad to know about that. A good friend of many of us, Anne Geyer, has come down with COVID. Yes, and maybe that's the reason why I'm wearing this mask today I don't think any of us enjoy wearing these masks. But you never know. When you're in a large gathering with folk, you never know how you might catch it. She has no idea how she caught it. But we do know that quite a few ladies of the Visamana have come down with it. So maybe we need to begin thinking. The season is changing. There are people coming and going all the time in San Miguel that when we're in gatherings with people like we are here this morning, that we might want to wear just as a precaution. Are there any concerns in the chat box? No. Okay, thank you. So we do light our next candle, a profound concern and grieving for the unspeakable tragic events that have been unleashed in the Israeli-Palestinian disaster of the last week, with no apparent end in sight. We UUs know very well that any traumatic pattern of violence and revenge will only result in deeper division, in suffering and despair. We pray that world leadership will listen to their better angels for a more creative, more human solution to this festering conflict in the land that's called holy. And now we light our candle, as we have for almost 2 years now, our blue and yellow candle, for the deep concern for all the people who are caught in the disastrous conflict, the unprovoked and unjust war of aggression by Russia against the people of Ukraine. Finally, we light a candle of any joy or concern that we may have deep in our hearts but remain unspoken. Thank you. And now, while Jerry is playing some beautiful music, we invite any of you to come forward and light a candle that, of a joy or concern, you would like to symbolically raise with the flame of lighting a candle. My apologies because I lost one of the cards that were given this morning, and one of our visitors mentioned that their dear friend Dennis Westbrook is in hospice, and they wish him grace as he moves into transition.
Small children think of grace two ways. Body grace in beautiful movements, as our Greek and Roman ancestors thought of the first of three graces. The second way for many children is grace as gratitude, saying grace before a meal to be thankful for our food. Our little girl was struggling with herself, her clumsiness, her falling all the time, her worry about being hurt by others. She had to have help to gather her limbs under her and begin to feel less fearful of others. Finding grace through mastering and practicing ballet steps and long movements. How many of us struggle with ourselves, so it's difficult for us to find grace. As Tom Rosiello noted a couple of weeks ago, all transformation begins with personal self-awareness. I think this may require the facilitation of another. We can hold each other's hands to find grace, as the little girl in the story's mother helped. In the story, the child's mother affirmed her little daughter's physical grace and asked the big question, are you becoming more graceful in your heart? The child thinks about tolerating her Aunt Julia's annoying kisses and asks her mom if that was grace. Their discussion leads to grace as being forgiving and giving up a beloved doll to her sister, and especially giving to others, being charitable. I think grace is natural to small children. Their openness to experiences, delight and joy in trying new things, natural kindness and loving, all expressed in little arms ready to hug. Can we recapture that? Can you feel your 6-year-old self while you're eating an ice cream cone in the Jardín? Grace starts with humility, whereby we recognize we don't know and don't have to know it all, and acknowledge our smallness in the world. We don't have to pretend to be big. When we have a deep sense of love and devotion to something, and we are open with a sense of wonder like a child, we open a space within us to receive grace and become a source of light, rather than always searching outside of ourselves for it. I think this is akin to what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, a state of at-one-ment with one's work or ideas. We lose a sense of time and place and just focus on a question or problem. Children do this easily. Just try calling a small child for dinner when she is building a Lego time machine or a rocket ship. I equate the state of flow with grace. So find the child within you, honor him or her. Find a friend to reflect with and listen well. Try listening for just one whole minute without interjecting, and become a light of grace for others.
Good morning. As we heard in Nora's lovely story, A young girl who feels awkward and ungraceful comes to believe in her worth and her gracefulness with the help of her loving mother. And through feeling grace within herself, she learns a bit about extending grace to others. For some of us, the idea of grace is an easy or common part of our daily vocabulary. Even if we don't use the word grace to describe how we feel or in an interaction or in life in general, I think we know it when we experience it. Still, I've not been much accustomed to using the word grace or thinking about it much in my daily life, and too bad for me. So I've enjoyed thinking about and writing about the concept of grace for today's service. Refreshing my own really rusty memory of the origins of grace in both Jewish and Christian history helped me grasp the distinctions between a religious concept of grace and the more secular meanings of grace that we as Unitarian Universalists might ordinarily use or understand. The Greek word for grace is charis. Other meanings include kindness and even life itself. Prior to the Christian era, the word charis appeared often in the Hebrew Bible, referring to goodwill and loving kindness and favor. A Jewish understanding of God includes his willing love and acceptance of his creation. The Jewish Bible frequently refers to a gracious God. God delights in us, sees us as a treasure, and regardless of our status or our behavior. By the time of the New Testament, during the century after Jesus' death, and then over the many centuries as Christianity spread throughout the world, charis, or grace, became inextricably tied to the Christian doctrines of substitutionary sacrifice and atonement, by which God sacrifices his own Son in the person of Jesus, who willingly dies to be the full atonement for humanity's sinfulness. In Christian doctrines of grace, God's love and acceptance came to feel conditional to a lot of us. For those of us who had a Christian upbringing and who now have chosen a non-theistic path like Unitarian Universalism, these complicated Christian doctrines may have been a catalyst that pushed us from our long-ago church homes. Having separated from Christian upbringing, many who come to embrace the humanistic faith of Unitarian Universalism often did so because we found it impossible to sustain a belief in the inherent sinfulness or brokenness of humanity, a humanity that can only be saved by God's act of substitutionary sacrifice. This is all pretty heady stuff. But here's the good news. As UUs, we don't need to give up on the deep meanings and the possibility of finding value and beauty in secular concepts of grace. Free of religious connotation, the concept of grace includes the idea of non-meritorious or unearned favor, unearned gift or blessing, given freely and never as merit for work performed. That's grace. Regardless of the spiritual paths we may walk, giving and receiving grace in our lives can make our walking easier. For the next few minutes, I won't talk much more about grace, as I try to evoke a connection to what it might mean for you. I invite you to close your eyes if you wish, or just sit quietly, as I read 5 or 6 statements. As you hear the words, see what resonates for you. Consider your experience with that concept of grace. Perhaps it's familiar from your youth, your upbringing, or for now. Grace is approval or favor. Grace is God reaching downward to people who are in rebellion against him. Grace is a short prayer at a meal, asking a blessing or giving thanks. Grace is unmerited divine assistance granted to humans for their sanctification. Grace is a charming or attractive trait or characteristic. Grace is free, sovereign favor to the ill-deserving. And a final one. Grace is unconditional love toward a person who does not deserve it or hasn't done anything in particular to deserve it. Thank you. Regardless of how you grew up and who you are now, do any of these resonate with you, for good or not good? How do the statements with religious connotations, overtones, resonate compared to those that have secular meanings? At its best, secular understandings of grace have to do with being accepted and loved as we are, for who we are. For many people of whatever religious faith, the need for connection, it was perhaps the greatest draw to a religious community. And becoming part of that community answers a deep need for connection between us. And I think we all agree that our need for connection is central in our own lives. When the time comes in our lives, if we discard earlier religious belief systems, we often lose that community, and our need for human connection doesn't go away. When this happens, in fact, it might be the time of our greatest need to reconnect in other ways. Practicing a form of secular grace can fill this void. This kind of grace doesn't assume people are inherently broken. It doesn't assume punishment is required in order to earn grace. There doesn't need to be a barrier between us based on religious expectations of how we should live or act or believe. When we receive grace from others in the midst of our own imperfect lives, boy, that's a freeing feeling, isn't it? So when we receive it, giving it back feels wonderful as well. Secular grace acknowledges that there is nothing more important, more valuable, moral, or ethical than people loving and accepting one another as they are. Learning to see the simple grace of life around us and in how we relate to others helps us understand that we are each who we are in this moment in our lives, being the best we can be because of each other. So I leave you with this suggestion that grace is very much like the philosophy inherent in the South African expression of Ubuntu. The philosophy suggests a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. The meaning of Ubuntu, with which so many of us are familiar, is this: I am because we are. This kind of grace has absolutely no downside. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. My name's Don Zealot, and I am the past chairman of SAC, the Social Action Committee. I'm now honored to be one of the 5 governors of the new foundation called the Social Justice Foundation. That foundation, the new Social Justice Foundation, will be the vehicle by which we raise funds for our non-governmental organizations, for our NGOs in San Miguel. In 2023, the fellowship gave to 11 NGOs. And I'd like to list the NGOs for you today quickly. I know it's been a long service. Caminos de Agua is dedicated to clean, potable water in the campo, whether through water catchment off the roofs of the schools and the buildings, or by advocating for cleaner water from the aquifers. UUFSMA, we've talked about that today, is a school for the deaf that was founded. It's run today by John Doherty, one of our members. Casa Linda is an NGO that's modeled after Habitat for Humanity, and they provide housing for impoverished families. CEDESA is quite a large organization in Guanajuato State that is devoted to bringing justice to the communities. I don't know how many of you knew Cliff Durand, a longtime member. He was a strong advocate and steward for Sedesa. And we're looking for somebody to replace him on the Social Justice Committee. Centro Infantil de Los Angeles gives guidance to preschool children of single mothers, and I would encourage you all to think about visiting this school. It's a wonderful place in Santa Julia. The Fundación for Apoyo Infantil, they are in alliance with the UN-sponsored Save the Children, and Ann Geyer, one of our members, is a strong supporter of that organization. Jóvenes Adelantes gives scholarships to deserving young women, and many of our members have been stewards and mentors for this organization. Libros para Todo they're totally committed to bringing reading skills to children in the campo and also in San Miguel proper. Mujeres en Cambio, they give scholarships to deserving young women in the campo. And Niños con Autismo, they help children and their parents deal with children with autism. And finally, Patronatos por Niños, they bring medical services to the campo. They have an incredible fleet of vehicles that are totally equipped with medical equipment and doctors and dental, and I would encourage you to go visit them also. And a lot of our members have been following and supporting this organization for so many years. I could speak for hours about every one of these organizations. They're all incredible. And there are various ways that the foundation is going to raise funds for these NGOs now that we've been separated essentially. We're going to be writing grants. We're going to be soliciting funds from UUs in the north. And we're going to be asking for donations from within the congregation by various means that you'll learn about later. In the weeks to come, you will be made aware of all of the methods by which you, as members, can give to the fellowship with administrative and ministerial expenses. Also, in the weeks and months to come, you will be reminded of how the foundation is progressing with its new role, and you'll be reminded of how you can help. Going forward, please anticipate getting involved with more community activities, whether it's through the stewardship campaign promoted by the fellowship that's coming up pretty soon, or through the volunteering and activities within the Social Justice Committee. 2024 is going to be a fun, gratifying year, and I hope you enjoy the ride. It's going to be a lot of very interesting things going on. And if you have any further questions, please ask me or any member of the board after the service, and we'll answer any questions you have. The offering will now be collected and gratefully received. Thank you.
Now let's join our voices together in song, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple." It's hymn number 16 in the UU hymnal. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. The words will appear on the screen. With our closing responsive reading 664 in the gray hymnal, it's also going to be on the screen, and I'm going to do the solid text, and Paula is going to do the italics, okay? So it's called "Give Us the Spirit of the Child." Give us the spirit of a child. Give us the child who lives within.
The child who trusts, the child who imagines, the child who sings.
The child who receives without reservation, the child who gives without judgment.
Give us a child's eyes, that we might receive the beauty and freshness of this day, like sunrise.
Give us the child's ears, that we may hear the music of mythical times.
Give us a child's hearts, that we may be filled with wonder and delight.
Give us a child's faith, that we may be cured of our cynicism.
Give us the spirit of a child, who is not afraid to need, who is not afraid to love.
By listening deeply to each other and finding the spirit of the child within, we can find and give each other grace. And as you exit, would you please bring the hymnals to the back cupboard where they're stored? Thank you.